You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, good to be back with you all on the Mighty Blue podcast. I'm your host, Steve Adams, and I wanted to start by thanking those of you who reached out to me once again, wishing me well after another incident. I still don't know what it was, nor do my doctors. Yet I'll be seeing a cardiologist on August the 1st, and hopefully he'll find out what's going on. I'm still hoping to head out on the Wonderland Trail with my buddy, Baseman, at the end of September, but that's probably looking less likely, as I don't intend to head out until I'm clear to go. When this happened the first time in July 2022, I was able to summit Mount Whitney 2 months later. But this is clearly not a one-off, as I've now had 3 attacks and nobody knows what it is. I'll let you all know when I find something out. Our main guest today is Glen Van Peski, a guy who started the company Gossamer Gear and significantly pushed the ultralight backpacking movement forward. As you'll hear in our conversation, he is so much more than that and happens to be a really terrific bloke. Glen will be on in a moment. Then we'll catch up with 2 of our Mighty Blue class of 2024 members, with Moxie and Professor Milkshake putting in appearances this week. After those 2, Emily Leonard is learning that, despite the best laid plans of mice and men, and women of course, all hikers have to make adjustments on the fly. So let's get going and meet Glen Van Peski. Our guest today, Glen Van Peski, was the founder of Gossamer Gear and one of the leaders of the ultralight backpacking revolution. Hey Glen, thanks for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Now, you kindly sent me a copy of your book, Take Less, Do More, with a very neat subtitle of Surprising Life Lessons. I've dipped in and out of it, but I wanted to start with the reason that you decided on an unusual career choice after you'd retired. You became a dishwasher. Now, that story is told in detail in your book, so I'm going to focus on what you wrote about once you got the job. You said it was great being part of a team. And being part of a team is something I really miss from my work days. Tell us what it was that was so important to you that you were part of that team, because once again, reading more of the book, I noticed you were observing these people working while you were having your cup of coffee in the morning and your whatever it was you were eating every single day. So tell us what it was about teamwork that you really enjoyed.
Well, I think, and I tell people who are facing retirement, I think most people that are looking at retiring, they think about all the things that they don't like about work that are going to go away when they retire. If it's long commutes or endless meetings or Zoom calls these days, writing reports, email, whatever it is. And they're excited about all the things that are going to go away when they retire. And I advise them to think about the things that they like about work, because those are also going to go away. And that's, being part of a team, working towards a common goal, kind of the excitement of a deadline, the adrenaline rush, being an expert, having people come to you asking for advice because you've been around, you know how to do things, being able to train younger people and getting accolades for what you do, a job well done or something like that. All of that stuff also goes away when you retire. And so I, through every week, spending my Monday mornings at the coffee shop instead of at work, I just observing how the staff work together. And it's a busy place. Everyone's got to be doing their job, and they've got to be doing it quickly. You got to take care of the customers. And it was obvious to me that they were having a good time. So, when I saw a sign that they were looking for a part-time dishwasher, I thought that might have my name on it. So, and it's great. It scratches that itch. I was hired for a specific, a guy that was going to be gone for a while. And now I'm very, very, very part-time. I'm kind of dishwasher of last resort, as I say. And we're gone a lot, so I'm not that reliable in terms of availability. But, working there, it's like the day goes fast. I mean, you're just slammed. and everyone there is super appreciative because, frankly, dishwashers are kind of bottom of the rung, but they all know that without clean dishes, nothing else happens.
Absolutely.
And they're very super appreciative. And a lot of times I'm paired with I'm always paired with a younger dishwasher, for part of the shift because it's more than one person can do. And it's just cute. I was working with a young, probably high school young lady the other day, and she was just, I forget how old I am. I mean, until I look in a mirror, obviously, but, it was just so cute. She was like, how are you doing? You doing okay? Do you need to take a break? Is it okay if I take a break? Or, she's twice as fast as I was on everything, but it was just cute. Suddenly I was like, oh, I'm probably like her grandpa's age, and she's worried about how am I keeping up. So that's
kind of nice though.
Yeah.
Two things. Do they pay you?
I do get paid. Now,
Good.
When I was working Sundays and Mondays every week, I got a paycheck, W-2, the whole 9 yards. Currently, they switched payroll systems, and I don't work enough to be worth setting me up. So I get paid in gift cards.
Very nice. You know what? That's, to me, from my brief conversation with you, my dipping in and out of the book, and also doing a little bit of research about you, you seem to be an incredibly grounded person. There's nothing more grounded, I would imagine, than taking on the job as a dishwasher, particularly when you're an engineer and you pass, is it summa cum laude, they call it over here, and you've got all sorts of background stuff in your life. You didn't need to be a dishwasher, but you turned up. You put your best foot forward. I was particularly interested in the detail of the dress that you wore on that, or how you dressed that day. And I think that's a good lesson for anybody going to any interview. Put your best foot forward every time.
Yeah, and I talked to. I submitted a resume because that's what they wanted with a cover letter, and I explained, look, I don't want to take a job away from someone who needs one.
Sure.
Because I don't. But, having run small businesses, it seemed like it could be useful to have someone who knew how to do the job, live close, could come in at short notice, but you didn't need to worry how many hours they were getting because they didn't really need the money. So, yeah, it's been great. And, I was just in there meeting with a guy yesterday, and, they go to the staff rack and give me some extra stuff, and everyone says hi, who works there. The old timers, there's a bunch of new people that don't know me, but and I get an employee discount, which I think the employee discount has probably cost them more than my actual wages if you actually did the math. But
that is funny.
They seem to be okay with it.
Now let's get to the outdoors, which is what one of your many passions seems to be. And I'm once again looking through the book, I noticed in the pictures in the book you've got quite a few actual group hikes. Is that your preferred way to spend time in the outdoors? Because a lot of us, if you're hiking the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and various other trails, a lot of us like to be by ourselves, the hike your own hike. Most of your pictures seem to be where you're hiking with somebody else. Is that how you like to do it?
I like to do both. I think I'm an introvert, so I certainly enjoy spending time by myself and need that for my sanity. But it's also nice when you're experiencing something to have someone to share it with.
Sure.
And so that's fun too. And I like, most of the time in life, we don't really have time to connect with people. I met a guy for coffee the other day, and, this was probably the exception. Spent most of the morning talking. I'd never met him before. But usually it's like, I got an hour for coffee, and, you catch up on what the kids or grandkids are doing. You don't really have a chance to get below the surface. And, I'm not a thru hiker, but talking to people like you who are, there's something. I've experienced a little bit of this, hiking for 3-4 weeks from, through Europe with a group of people. Just something about walking every day with someone. You get a chance for those unhurried conversations and those explorations of life and, meanings and things they've been through and the lessons they took from it, that you just don't get that opportunity, I think, except on a long trip.
It's a remarkably leveling thing to do, isn't it? Walk with somebody. It doesn't matter who you are, the fact that you are a dishwasher or a CEO of a company, whatever you are, you can find your common cause, can't you, with somebody else, and having those conversations, which immediately click onto quite intimate things straight away. I think is one of the wonderful things, one of the undersaid things of being on a hike. And I know that your definition of being outdoors incorporates several disciplines, not just hiking. You kayak, you bike, you run ultramarathons, or you did, I don't know whether you still do or not, and you ski. Do you find you get something different from each discipline? And if you do, what are the differences between those things?
Yeah, I tend to like my outdoor adventures less curated. And so I have a fondness for backpacking because it's just walking. There's minimal stuff to break down. I've done, 1,300 miles bike packing. And that was fun because it was different challenges to solve in terms of gear and things like that.
Sure.
But to me, you've got, and I didn't really have any major equipment problems, but a bicycle, although it's simple mechanism, I mean, these days, modern gravel bikes can be fairly complex. And to me, it's more stuff to go wrong. I'm happiest on even skis, getting the right wax, the binding can break. I just love backpacking because you're just walking. As long as your feet are moving,
you're doing it.
Yeah, there's nothing to break down.
Yeah.
Except you. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And before you started Gossamer Gear in the late 90s, you've been outdoorsy for much of your life anyway. And we all need somebody, I think we do anyway, we all need somebody in our life to get us out there. Who was that for you in your life? Who got you out there in the outdoors?
Well, growing up in Southern California, we would go camping. I mean, I get pictures of me as a baby in the back of my dad's van parked in some state park. And I remember the Coleman lanterns and the Coleman stoves and the big ice cooler. And, that was traditional camping. But I just never forget, my love of the birds chirping, the huge trees, the smell of the sun on the pine needles. Yeah, I love that.
I think your senses are heightened when you get out there. I don't pay attention much when I'm just kind of going to the shops or just wandering around. But when I'm actually out on a trail and I've got my pack on, I almost feel I've got my uniform on and I feel more attuned to where I am. That's how I feel about it. And hopefully that's how most people experience it, because I find it exacerbates everything around you. When you're out there walking, you can actively listen to something, be intentional about what you're doing, and for me, that's one of the strong points of hiking.
Well, and I think part of it is it gets rid of everything else. I mean, if you go for a walk in the park, I mean, yeah, you're walking in nature, but you're thinking about the next podcast you got to do and what you got to pick up at the store and how you're behind on putting up your last hike in England and all these things you have to do that you're thinking about. And when you're 3 days into a longer hike, you're not thinking about that anymore. You have no cell coverage. You can't do anything on your to-do list. So all that falls away. And I think that's part of what allows you to notice, it heightens your awareness of everything else that's going on around you because you don't have the distraction inside your mind of all your to-do list and the things you worry about.
Now, you were, in fact, you still are married for over 40 years to Francie, your wife. By the way, as a bit of an aside, on Glen's website, it says to his smoking hot wife, Francie, of over 40 years, which she must have loved that when she saw that, by the way. When we spoke yesterday, you seem to have this, seemingly perfect life. And I asked you if you're a religious man. You said that you are, and you pointed me to a page in the book that told how you converted. But naturally, being a curious guy, I started reading, went back a few pages, and what led up to that. And you say that you were having a hard time buying into the Catholic Church. And something you said also, someone said you have to become a Catholic to learn this much more. Tell us about that struggle and then what changed.
Well, my wife, Francie, actually Mary Frances, grew up Catholic.
Oh, Mary Frances! Oh, that would have been a giveaway straight away. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Sister Mary Frances, as she says. Yeah, and she went to Catholic school. Our kids. So when we got married in the Catholic Church, actually, and I had to sign something. She was worried about marrying someone who didn't believe in God, but she figured, well, the priest didn't seem concerned, so. I guess it'll work out. And I had to sign something or acknowledge that I understood that Francie had an obligation to bring the kids up Catholic. So I'm thinking like, well, that's on her. I mean, that's like, that's not my problem. I'll sign that. But through, a number of things that happen, I've always been interested in, personal growth, spiritual growth, and wanted to find out more about the Catholic faith because I didn't grow up in it. Mm-hmm. And so they had a class at the local Catholic church. It was kind of like the next town over, not exactly where we lived. And I went and they kind of said some things and I thought, okay, well, this is going to be interesting. It's going to be an 8-week course or something. I'll learn all about this. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I'll learn all about it. And then at the end, there'll be like an opportunity to become Catholic, whatever that means. And I have no idea if my experience was the standard or some anomaly or it's changed. It was a long time ago. But as I recall anyway, we got like 1, maybe 2 classes with some basic kind of stuff. And then it was like, okay, sign up to become Catholic. And it's like, well, you haven't taught me. I don't even understand what that is yet. I want to understand what that is before I sign on the dotted line, which I didn't think was unreasonable. It's like someone saying, sign a blank contract and we'll fill in the rest later. It's like, I don't know. It doesn't seem right to me. So I didn't become Catholic. But later on, came to faith through a gopher.
Yes. I think we need to share that one as well, which is, I was reading this one, I thought, this can't be how it happened, but it actually was how it happened, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So tell us about that one.
God can use anybody or anything. So we'd been trying out different churches. This is our second son, Derek, was born severely disabled, huge impact. As an engineer, I'm used to, hey, we got a problem, let's figure it out.
Yeah.
Apply.
You can't sort that sort of thing out yourself, can you?
Kind of reason it out, apply resources, whatever. And that was not going to work in this case. And so we started checking out different churches. We've been checking out a small church that our neighbors around the corner went to. They had kids the same age as our kids, played together. And so it's kind of, going to church and listening to sermons and reading my Bible and learning some when I got a gopher hole in the backyard. At first it's like a lot of things in life. You kind of ignore it and hope it'll go away, and then there's a second one and a third one. And I tried tamping them down and hoping maybe they'll go somewhere else. And I tried like smoke bombs put in there and,
So you were Bill Murray, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Bill Murray. And none of that seemed to work. So finally it's like, okay, I'm going water. I'm a hydraulics engineer. I'm going to, go water. So I put the hose in, turned on a little bit, and it's just pouring down this thing. No sign of water coming up anywhere, not backing up. I turn up a little more. Pretty soon the hose is going full blast down this hole. And I'm starting to think like, what have they built under here? Like what does my yard look like? This water is just pouring into it, not coming out anywhere. So finally, there was a hole near the front of the edge of the corner of the garage, which was the lowest point. And finally, there started like a trickle of water started coming out there. So I'm thinking like, okay, well, this is probably, if the gopher gets swept downstream, this is where he'll pop up. So I grab a shovel and I'm standing there waiting as the water's trickling out. And I prayed. I said, God, I get the whole eternal salvation thing, and that sounds like a good deal. But, hopefully death is a long way off for me. I was pretty young. Are you any good, until then? Do you care about, the day-to-day problems like this darn gopher that's destroying my yard? And right after I prayed that prayer, the gopher sputtered up, and I killed him with a shovel and turned off the water, and then went around the corner to our neighbors and said, I want to pray to receive Jesus.
Good Lord. That is kind of remarkable. You know what's even more remarkable? The timing of it. I think Derek, your son, had been born with hydrocephalus. So and you're trying to come to a faith. Didn't that lessen the chances of coming to the faith? Or when you put it into context, did it strengthen your faith?
Well, I think I think it drove me to faith. It was Derek's condition was a problem I couldn't solve, and working twice as hard wasn't going to fix it.
Sure.
Being smarter wasn't going to fix it. And I mean, God didn't fix it. He fixed my gopher problem. I never had gophers at that house ever again. But, as I grew in my understanding, I realized that God doesn't fix all our problems, but he promises to walk through those problems with us. And that's what he did with Derek.
Okay. Now, I want to go back to your group hikes, and one that you took with the Brains Trust hike in the Cascades. There were 4, which was amazing to me, 4 ultralight guys together, including the tarp tent guy, Henry Shires. And my first tent, when I first did the through hike, was a tarp tent, double rainbow. So I love that. As far as you know, where did the idea of ultralight actually come from? Because I'd imagine it would need an engineer to even contemplate the issue, because people would go out with these huge frame packs and so on. So did it register with you early, or did you have this conversation with somebody? How did it start off as far as you're concerned?
Well, I know how it started out for me personally.
Yeah,
I think in general,
really, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about you. Actually,
yeah, because in general terms, people point to Grandma Gatewood, and then Ray Jardine, I think, is generally kind of considered kicked off like the modern ultralight movement,
right.
And certainly. Right. A buddy of mine reading his book, the Pacific Crest Trail Hiker's Handbook, was kind of what brought it to the forefront of my mind. But it is interesting when you look at some of especially the early ultralight guys. I mean, Henry Shires I think he's got a PhD in physics or something. He's like a way smart guy. Ron Moak is a computer engineer, super sharp. Brian Frankel, he's just plain smart. I don't think he has any advanced degrees, but he thinks like an engineer and in systems. So yeah, for me, my mom thought every kid should leave home after high school, knowing how to cook, bake, and sew. So for me, it was just a natural to, the pack that REI sold me for our first big Sierra trek with the Boy Scout troop that my son joined. Weighed 7.5 pounds empty. So I thought, it was one of the fancy new internal frame packs. And so I thought, well, that's a good place to start. 7.5 pound pack. I bet I can make that lighter.
So that became the thing, and people would, that was a very successful company, I know. I'm not really going to talk about it so much, but when that group hike of the four of you guys, you scientists and engineers and stuff, what was that campfire conversation about? That would fascinate me. What were you trying to make it even more ultralight? I mean, what were you talking about?
Well, there was always some trash talking. I mean, that's for sure.
Of course.
A lot of it coming from Moak, I think. He was always trotting out some design that was going to, sink Gossamer Gear, was going to kill our pack because no one would buy it anymore once he came out with his new one. I was the lightest of the bunch. The things that stick in my mind were, Brian Frankel is super fit, super strong, even faster on uphills than downhills in a weird freak of nature kind of way.
So you hate those people.
Yeah. And so he doesn't, he never paid much attention to weight. But I think in the trash talking lead up to one of our Brain Trust hikes, because we did them a number of times, Brian actually decided, not that he cares what anybody thinks, but generally he put some effort into going lighter. And I just remember him saying like, yeah, this is kind of nice having less weight. I don't know if he made any permanent changes on how he hikes, but it was just interesting that he tried it because of kind of all the talking and gear lists going on to one of these hikes. One of the funny things about those hikes was when we'd meet another hiker, like someone doing a through hike or out for a week or something, they'd come across like the founders of 4 different ultralight companies, and they're like,
right.
It just blew their mind. Like, wait, you guys are all competitors, but you're out here hiking together? It's like, yeah, there's
That's what, I'm glad you said that. It did me as well. I thought, really? You went out with all these guys? But of course you would. Why would you not? You come across as a humble guy. You're grateful for lots of things in life, your business and everything that life's given you and so on. Why wouldn't you go with guys with similar interests? So, but it struck me exactly the same way. Why don't these guys go out together? So that's why I want to know about the conversation. And was there an aha moment for you when you saw the link between being on a trail, lightening your load, and then the lessons that these experiences were teaching you? Was there something you thought, oh, this lightening the load thing, and I'm hiking, and then I've got these experiences? Were you learning stuff and not knowing you were learning it?
Yeah, I can't point to any particular aha moment, like a gopher moment, or so to speak. Yeah. But I think in general, the process of creating margin, because, when you lighten your load for a backpacking trip, you're creating margin of time and energy.
Sure.
Maybe not money, because gear's expensive for most people unless you started a backpacking company.
The lighter it is, the more expensive it is normally.
Yeah, generally, yeah. But you're creating margin. And so for the case of, if you're busy working and you have limited time to get out, you can go further in a 3-day weekend. If you can only do 5 miles a day, you're not going as far as if you can do 20 miles a day.
Sure.
And then you're creating margin to notice other things, kind of like what we were talking about earlier.
Sure.
If you're carrying a 50-pound pack, you're not noticing the birds chirping or the deer poking its head out around the bush. You're just thinking about, oh my gosh, how far before I can take this pack off?
That's right.
And so it helps lessening the burden, helps your curiosity about things. You can notice things, and part of it is you're creating margin to help others. If everyone on a trip is packing lightweight and someone sprains an ankle or something, it's relatively simple to redistribute their load. If everyone's carrying 50-pound packs and someone has to get rid of their 50-pound pack, that's another proposition. I mean, that.
But, I think what happens when people certainly the people I've interviewed on here, one of the things that I think we all do, maybe it doesn't last forever, but when you get back from a trip, you always want to kind of strip down what you've got in your life. You don't need as much as you thought you needed. Well, we're always surrounded by stuff. I've got tons of stuff in this room. I don't need half of it, but you do have tons of stuff in your life, and that lighter load of stuff is something that's quite appealing to most hikers. And I think one of the things that comes across in most of my interviews is how people change some of the things they have in their life because they just realize they don't need all that stuff anymore.
Yeah, and I think part of it is you touched on, it gives you, when you're out with a 5-pound base pack weight, you realize like, wow, I really don't need that much to be healthy and happy and have fun. And that can lead you to either, get rid of stuff or have a different relationship with it. Maybe you still have some stuff, but you realize that doesn't provide happiness. It's a tool. And it can be a tool to help others. It could be a tool, like I have way too much gear. But that's a tool. It's a tool for being outside and getting those experiences. And another thing that going outside gets you, and I'm sure you've experienced this and your other guests, is it resets your gratitude and your expectations. If we're sitting at home and the internet's a little slow, it's like, oh my gosh, this is terrible.
It really ain't.
You have to wait a minute for the water to get hot in the faucet. It's oh my gosh, this is, terrible conditions here. But when you come back from a week or a month or 4 months of sleeping on the ground, trudging through mud, treating your water, having potable water at any temperature you want in multiple locations from your house is magic. I mean, it's just crazy magic.
It is remarkable. Yeah, every time.
Yeah. So it restores your wonder and appreciation for the stuff that we take so for granted in this country.
And that certainly is a nice little segue onto the book itself and those surprising life lessons. I should point out, by the way, that to the listeners, that 100% of the proceeds from the book are going to go to the Pacific Crest Trail Association. So good on you for doing that. Was there a particular catalyst for writing this, or did this seem a good time this is kind of a memoir, but at the same time imparting lessons you've learned. So was there a particular reason you did this?
Yeah, I hate to say memoir because actually today's my birthday, but I'm hoping.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. I'm hoping I got a few years left. But yeah, actually it started about 10 years ago. So, and this story is sprinkled in the book, but John Mackey, the co-founder of Whole Foods Market, ended up saving Gossamer Gear when I was going to close it down because I never took a salary from the company. And so at some point it got so big that I couldn't afford to do both.
Sure.
But he stepped in and saved it. And as a result, I've done a lot of hiking with John over the years. And probably about 10 years ago now, he said, hey, we're hiking along, talking about gear because he loves gear. And he said, Glenn, you should write a book. I'll write the foreword. And nice. I said, yeah, I don't think I need to write a book. There's a bunch of great ultralight backpacking books out there. Not sure I have that much more to say, at least not a book's worth. But John's very persistent. And, year after year, hike after hike, he keeps bugging me about writing this book. And pretty soon he gets his friends and, I'll be hiking with one of his friends on a hike and they'll say, hey, John says you're writing a book. It's like, oh my gosh. So finally I decided I should do it. And, before he forgot his offer to write the foreword. So I finally got around to it.
And I read it this morning, you give a take on your life and you tell two different stories of your own life, which was really cleverly done, by the way. And I suspect we can all do it as well. Yeah. And I don't want to give everything away here because, of course, we want people to buy the book. But I asked you to think about 5 particular lessons that mean not necessarily the most, but of specific relevance to your life. Hopefully you've considered a few. What would you say? What's the first one you'd like to share with us?
I would say perspective. We kind of talked about that. How little you really need to be happy. And so I can still have stuff. I mean, we have cars we have a very nice adventure van, but people are often surprised by how unattached we are to them. We'll land a $200,000 van to people we just met.
You just met me.
There you go. Sorry, go on. Someone crashed into my car when it was brand new, and they were surprised at how little I cared about that. I mean, it's stuff. It's a thing.
Hang on though. A new car is a nice, pretty thing, isn't it? And it's a
Subaru.
Thing.
It's not, it's not like it was a Mercedes or something. Even so, it's like I don't know. I think we're not that attached. We have lots of nice stuff, but I think we're less attached to it because we realize that doesn't make us happy. I mean, we enjoy it, but we don't need it. I think there's a difference.
Absolutely.
Between having nice stuff and having your nice stuff own you.
So what about your second one? What would the second story, life lesson be?
I would say generosity. When you take less weight, you have more ability to help others. We grew up, my mom, I remember her saying the expression noblesse oblige, which basically, if you have, it comes with an obligation to
Absolutely.
Share with those who have less. You're not blessed so you can have an awesome life. You're blessed so you can pass that along to others. And, sometimes it's money, sometimes it's knowledge, sometimes experience, sometimes it's a podcast. You have that so that you can bless others. And, I've been lucky in that regard. And wanted early on, actually before I was a believer, wanted to be intentional in my giving. Because I think most of us probably want to be generous, but someone's having a hard time. They need a month's rent, but my car's transmission just broke, or my kitchen braces. So I don't really have money to spare. So I didn't want to be in that situation. So early on, I started taking a set percentage of every paycheck and putting it in a separate checking account. And
that's quite important to you, wasn't it? So you're effectively tithing before your church gave you not so much the obligation or the responsibility of tithing. Yeah. So that was something you did before you found God. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right.
That's true. And it started it wasn't even a tithe. It was like 5% of the after-tax income. And now it's, many times a tithe of our pre-tax income. But I wanted to have that. I wanted to be intentional about that and have a separate account so that when a need came up, I didn't have to figure out if I had money to address it. I only needed to find out, does this have my name on it? Am I supposed to make this person's next rent payment or not?
And do you pray about that?
Sometimes I do, probably not as often as I should.
Okay. And what about number 3?
Number 3 would probably be, I don't know. There's so much overlap.
There are a lot in there, and I can see it's a struggle to choose just 5 actually.
Yeah,
I'm not going to push you for 5 in that case. Just give me one more right now, then.
Curiosity, I think, is a big one, and this kind of gets back to margin. If you have some margin, gives you the ability to be curious and to notice other things, gets your focus off yourself. And so you can, like you talked about, being in wilderness, you notice things.
Sure.
And like a little example of that, I was at a business meeting down in LA with someone, and we're meeting at a Starbucks. She used to work at a Starbucks. And
you didn't volunteer to wash dishes, did you?
What's that? No.
You didn't volunteer there.
No. She actually, the person I was meeting with, used to run a Starbucks, a number of Starbucks.
Right.
But so we're meeting at Starbucks because the place we have to go meet at isn't open yet, and she sits so she can see what's going on, and she notices we're talking about business and what we're doing. And she says, hang on a sec. And I follow her outside. She's noticed this gal who's outside with a very, very large dog. Uh-huh. And this is a big Starbucks, super busy. People are coming in, picking up drinks that they've phoned in on the app or something. I don't know how that works. There's a long line. And there's this gal who's kind of peeking in, but she's got this huge dog. Nothing to tie him to because he would drag like furniture around. And this gal noticed that. Thought, I wonder what's going on. So she went out and we met Tony, the dog, who was a sweetheart. And, she had an order, but she couldn't take Tony into the store to pick up the order. And she's trying to see from outside if her order's ready, but there's no way to read the labels from that far away, and she can't hear anything. I mean, the place is a din of noises. So my friend says, would you like us to watch Tony while you go get your drink? And she says, oh, that'd be awesome. So, we petted Tony and let him slobber on us for 10 minutes while she was able to go get her drink. And that's because my friend, was paying attention and noticed something and I was curious, I wonder why that lady I keep seeing that lady like peek in and she's got a dog with her. It's like, what's going on there?
It's funny, actually. I think a lot of people in this country that I found, I've been here for about 20 years, seem to have lost a lot of their curiosity. I found there was more. I feel there's a whole lot less these days, and that's slightly concerned me, but I suspect that's a worldwide issue anyway as well. So if there's one that would the perspective be the most important one to you, or is there one that particularly applies to you? Do you think to yourself, I just can't live without that one?
Yeah, I would say the perspective, kind of restoring your appreciation for, we live such amazing lives in this country.
We do.
But, we're the most depressed nation in the world. That's like, and I mean, all these studies, people think their lives suck. And it's like, oh my gosh, you live the life that's the envy of the rest of the rest of the world. Everyone's trying to get here. And it's like, my life's terrible. I'm depressed and lonely. And it's crazy.
Well, I'll share something with you. When I was younger, a little bit younger, when I became an American citizen in 2012, I went to a packed room of 500 people. There were 500 at 8 o'clock in the morning and 500 at 1 p.m. in the afternoon who were becoming American citizens that day from 74 different countries, the first of which was Afghanistan. And at the end of, they said, we're going to do this pledge and we're going to call out the different countries, and United Kingdom was last, so I stood up and so on. And we're already standing up and we do the pledge. And then the lady said, I'd like to be the first to congratulate you. You are now citizens of the United States of America. The place went freaking crazy. And my son, who's sadly since passed, he gave me a hard time about becoming an American citizen because he said, yeah, America, the great Satan, blah, blah, blah. So I said to him, there's nowhere in the world, literally nowhere in the world, where 500 people twice in the same day in the same auditorium became American citizens, because that's what they dreamed of doing their whole lives. That hasn't been lost, and many Americans should try to go and see a swearing in ceremony if they get the chance. People still want to come here, so get your head out your asses and enjoy it. It's an important thing to enjoy. One last question: have you got any ambitions left at all?
Any ambitions left? Things I want to do?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I was, during COVID, I heard some people talking about how bored they were. They'd watched everything on Netflix. And I just thought, how sad, what a sad life to have. I mean, I always have more things I want to do than I have time to do them.
All right.
And, especially, I'm realizing there's things probably on my list that I'm never going to get to. It's always party. I mean, right now I've got gear I want to design. I've got, the whole book and the website stuff. That's a whole nother, thing to do.
You learn to prioritize as you get older, don't you? Things that are important more and more.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you're, busy, it focuses, you can't do everything. You realize that. And it's like, it makes you focus.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got hiking I want to do, trips we want to do in our adventure van, gear I want to design, people I want to meet, things like that.
You're never going to stop working, are you? Nor should you, by the way.
No.
Nor should you. Well, look, it's been an honor to have you on. You've been a great guest to have on the show, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us. Okay?
My pleasure.
Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.
All the best then. Bye.
Bye-bye.
What a guy, eh? He is so down to earth and understated. And if you buy his book, you'll see a picture where he goes hiking with Matthew McConaughey. So there's that. But seriously, his life lessons are distilled from his adventures in the outdoors. And I'll venture to suggest that we all learn something from moments outside. Glen has written a very accessible book that you can dip in and out of. You'll recognise some from your own experiences, but I'm sure you'll also be impressed by many of his observations. In fact, Glen told me after we spoke that he'd happily donate a couple of signed books to our listeners. So a quick question for you all. In our conversation today, when we were talking about the origins of the ultralight movement, Glen credited one man as the generally recognised initiator of the movement. Send me an email with the name of that man to steve@hikingradionetwork.com and I'll do a live drawing next week on the show when the first two names that come out of the hat will receive a signed copy of Glen's book. If you're confident you're going to win, let me have your mailing address as well. Thanks a lot, Glen. If you don't win a copy from Glen, of course, I have the links on how to buy it in the show notes. And remember, the proceeds will be going to the Pacific Crest Trail Association, so all in a good cause. Now, let's catch up with our Class of 2024 friends. This week, Moxie and I caught up again. Here she is.
Hello?
Hey, Anita. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you, Steve?
I'm not too bad. So where actually are you?
I'm just past the border in Vermont.
Oh, is that where you go in? There's a telephone, isn't there, right on the border?
Yeah, there was another one. I saw that on the trail somewhere down back a ways too. There was like a, not a real telephone.
Kind of cool. So there's a couple of points you've sent me some notes and so on. And you say you've had some pretty bad heat exhaustion. So how has it been that bad?
Yeah, so I was, I felt like I was just really dehydrated. I was having headaches and some nausea. My legs were like really jello. I'd get like hot dog fingers, so many, like swelling really bad. And so I'd reached out to this guy that I met that gave us trail magic back in May, him and his 2022 family, the grunge movement, and 511 and I had been staying in touch on Instagram. And I was like, hey, have you ever had this issue where, you're feeling groggy and and he's like, yeah. So he said, hey, I'm meeting you wherever you are. And he met me like 2.5 hours he drove, and he brought me salt lick caps.
Oh, okay.
Get them on Amazon. And after like 4 or 5 days of taking like 4 or 5 of them I'd take one every hour or so, I started feeling a ton better, and I haven't had the headaches, and I'm not feeling like I was. And I still take them as long as it's hot, and then once it cools down, I'll stop taking it. But yeah, I was having really bad heat exhaustion where I was just feeling crummy.
So what's it been like at night? Has it been warm at night as well?
Some nights have been really warm because there's not much of a breeze. So I guess it really depends on like where, you're camping. Sometimes you're on a ridge, but the last few nights it has been cooler. So that's helped a lot.
Yeah. Let's face it, it's the middle of July. Well, it's the end of July now. So it's certainly getting, this is as hot as it's going to get. Although, we have got August to come down here in Florida, and I'm dreading it already. The heat is horrendous as well here. And you said you've gone from cooking to cold soaking. What was the reason for that? Was that just to cut weight?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to cut weight, and honestly, like it's been so hot, I haven't even wanted to cook anything. Like it's just, I don't want to eat hot food after I've been sweating and all day long. And so I'd met this hiker Payday, and he's like, yeah, I cold soak. I just throw some Zatarain's in a pot, like in the morning, like in the afternoon, in a cup, and let it, throw some water in there and let it go, and then it's ready for dinner. And I was like, oh, I need to try this. And actually, it's been great. I've been doing that. I do ramen, and it's so nice. I just don't even have to worry about like heating anything. I don't have to carry fuel.
So let me get this right. So you actually just cold soak ramen, literally put it in a bottle or something like that, and just let it just dehydrate that way, or rehydrate that way.
Yeah. So
what does it taste like? What does it taste like?
Just cold noodles. And then I'll throw like some soy sauce in there, or like some sriracha or something to give it a little seasoning.
Uh-huh.
It's not bad. I mean, it tastes like cold noodles you bought out of a fridge, honestly, like a cold salad, kind of.
Oh dear. I mean, I would hate not to have coffee in the morning. Are you having cold coffee, or you just not drink coffee anyway?
Yeah, I would drink just iced coffee. I like iced coffee. So.
Yeah, really not my scene at all. I've thought about it because it must save quite a bit of weight as well. So did it help you in terms of, what is your pack now? How much is it weighing?
Well, I also sent home my bear can, so that got another like 3 pounds gone.
Oh, gosh.
So it's probably down in the 20s.
Wow.
20. Yeah.
The problem with getting rid of too much is that you may not have anything left to enjoy your time. But if you're happy with the cold soaking, and I know a lot of people are, then that's good for you as well. So what else has been going on then?
Not much. I mean, it's actually been really good. And I've been feeling good. I did fall the other day. Kind of got like. Yeah, I had a bad slip, and the backpack kind of pulled me backwards, and I fell on some rocks. Luckily, I just got like kind of a scrape up my arm, but nothing terrible. But yeah, it's been really good, actually. I've been feeling good. And
so you're coming to Vermont, and you're obviously through Connecticut and Massachusetts. How was Massachusetts? Did you enjoy that? I mean, for me, Massachusetts is one of the underrated states. So it was very pretty in there.
Yeah, it was really pretty. And you know what? Last night I stayed at the Boscombe Lodge.
Oh, right, did you?
Yeah, up there. They have like a $45 hiker special where you just stay in a bus and you get a shower and a continental breakfast. And, you know, it wasn't bad.
Nice. It's a great view up there as well. Did you have decent weather up there?
Oh, it was beautiful. Yeah, it was beautiful. And then there was a speaker last night that you could sit and listen to. And yeah, it was really nice, actually.
And who are you hiking with now?
I still have Jeff and Gazelle with me, but they're usually, like I said, behind me, and then we catch up at night.
Did they stay there last night as well?
No, they stayed at the shelter below. I hiked the extra 3 miles because my trail angel had came up and did some trail magic for me, and there wasn't a road down by the shelter, so I chose to hike the 3 miles up and sleep in a bed.
You know what? There's sometimes that is worth more than anything, isn't it? A shower's great and decent meal's great, but to sleep in a proper bed, you can't beat that, can you?
Oh no, not at all. And I have not done that very often, Steve. So it was really nice.
So you're in Vermont, and you've now got some tough states to come. You know, you can start climbing again. How are you looking forward to that?
I'm actually really excited. I've heard the views are amazing. You know, and just everybody keeps saying, take it slow though, because it's just amazing to hike through, you know, New Hampshire. And I'm excited about the Mahoosic Notch, you know, the longest mile on the trail. So
yeah, and it feels like it, by the way.
Yeah,
but it's a lot of fun though. You know, you're going to have a lot of fun. I said it's a good thing to go through with somebody. Don't get ahead of your friends there. Make sure that you stay with them for that, because you know you kind of want some other. Sometimes you might need a bit of help there as well.
Yeah, well, I think it was going to be kind of just a fun rock maze. It sounds like so.
Yeah, it should be great. It should be great. Okay, then. All right.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll catch up in a couple of weeks' time. I'm glad you're going well. Glad you're enjoying it still. And you know, it's so magical that somebody drives 2.5 miles, just 2.5 hours rather, just to help you out, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that was just really sweet of him, and he went through it, so he knew what I was going through, and honestly, it really, really has helped. So
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Anita. All right, we'll catch up soon then, okay?
All right, thanks, Steve. Have a great day.
Yep, cheers then. Bye.
Bye.
She's got her very own trail angel. That is something. He drove hours to get to her and brought salt tabs just to help her out. If you ever get out there, even though we always tell you how wonderful people are towards hikers, you're going to be shocked at the lengths some people will go to help you on your way. We hear it all the time, but it never gets old as far as I'm concerned. Heat exhaustion is no joke, and Moxie's trail angel stepped up and brought her what she needed and when she needed it. Now that's trail magic. And I know that cold soaking is a popular way to travel, but for me there are a few things better than a hot coffee in the morning and a proper hot meal after a hard day's hiking. Now, our public service announcement. Hear ye, hear ye. The Alder Gathering will be taking place this coming October in Abingdon, Virginia from the 11th to the 13th. And for those of you happy to stay over on Monday the 14th, there'll be a trail work trip to enable you to give back to our awesome hiking community. It's not expensive, just $25. Though if you shift yourselves, you can take advantage of the early bird rate of just $20 if you sign up by August the 15th. You can make it a really cheap yet fun weekend by camping for free at the site. And a special bonus, all 2024 completed through hikers can register for free, and you'll even get your special recognition at the event. There are hiking-related workshops throughout the weekend, while the keynote speaker on Saturday night is none other than one of our previous guests, Brianna DeSanctis, or Rocky Mountain High. Brianna was the first solo female to thru-hike the American Discovery Trail, and I can tell you, as someone who's interviewed her, she's a lot of fun and she really knows her stuff. And talking of fun, there'll be competitions and games throughout, while another friend of the show, the inimitable Miss Janet, will be sharing tales from the trails later on the Saturday. If you live anywhere near, or even if you have to travel, come along and support Alder in this joyous weekend. You can register at the Alder website, and the link will be in the show notes. So, our second member of our class of 2024 this week is the wonderfully named Professor Milkshake. Let's catch up with him. Here he is.
Hello.
Hey, David. How are you?
Hey, Steve. Good. How are you?
I'm not too bad. And we've only just immediately said we'd talk when you sent me a text. And I came back and you said that you were waylaid by trail magic on the way into Great Barrington. That's a great way to be waylaid. Tell us about that.
I was looking forward to getting into town and doing the resupply and getting some real food. But about 6/10 of the way before we get to Route 7, there was a big tent set up. 3 local churches apparently do trail magic nearly every day of the week for about 8 weeks. So we went up there and got hot dogs and hamburgers. And
Don't you hate it when that happens?
No complaints. No complaints.
Yeah, no complaints. Quite right too. And you've actually, in the notes you sent me, you've talked about other trail magic. So you're getting quite a bit of trail magic in the north.
What trail magic is, it comes in all shapes and sizes, and
of course,
not a lot of the big stuff. But I think sometimes when you're just having a rough day or it's hot, you're sweaty, and you find a little cooler on the side of the trail with a Coke in it or something like that. It's cold, it's wet, it's sweet, and it's just what you need, just at the right time.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing better,
It is surprising sometimes how exactly the right time it is, isn't it? So it's, you're thinking about it sometimes, and then it happens.
Yeah, you manifest it sometimes. It seems.
I think you do. Yeah.
There was another time we were going through Harriman State Park a couple days ago, and there was a sign on the trail, trail magic for through hikers. And it directed people to the back seat of a silver SUV. And you went down to this car, opened up the back seat. There was a child's car seat in the back, and there was a cooler with egg salad sandwiches and lemonade and cookies. And I just thought the trust that people have, to invite people into their car like that, it's amazing.
Yeah, and you know what? I suspect they do that because they've done it for years, and hikers generally can be trusted, can't they? So, you never. I mean, I know when I used to put my bag down, sometimes you have to leave it outside a shop. I never worried about it being stolen at all.
Yeah, you see that a lot. We were outside of it was in Stormville. There was a pizza shop in Delhi, and there must have been 12 bags outside, and trucks. Cars coming all day long, and no, we didn't worry about it.
Yeah, quite right too. Yeah. And you mentioned, along with trail magic, you mentioned town hospitality. Is that in a good, negative or a positive way, by the way?
No, a very positive way. We shortly after I talked to you last time, we were in Unionville.
Yeah.
Which you remember, you can sleep in the park.
Yes, I did it.
And, yeah. And the general store there, the people were so friendly, so nice. We went to the tavern, and the owner spent a great deal of time with us, telling us off-color jokes and spending a lot of time with us. The pizza and ice cream shop, the people were so friendly. There's an economic aspect, I think, to inviting hikers into town, but the people generally are they want you to succeed. They're interested in your stories. And so it's a pleasure to interact with them, and I think they enjoy it too.
I'm sure they do as well. And you say you've had some foot issues. So what's going on?
I've got this darn plantar fasciitis, and it makes it painful to walk, which is a little problematic.
It's a bit of a prerequisite for this hike, yeah.
Yeah, and what I noticed is I was starting to, not take the little blue blazes to the views, and trying to just, get the steps in I needed to make. And I thought I'm missing out here. And
yes.
I kind of was reflecting on what you've said and what our friend, the other member of the class, No Rush.
Yeah, No Rush. Yeah.
Michael. Yeah. About taking the views, we're probably only out here once. And so I'm really trying to figure out how to get this resolved. And so I can, when I'm out there, I can see all the views. I can do all the things I'm here to do. It's
So what are you doing to try to treat this then?
It's, I stretch. There are exercises you do. I've got special inserts. I've got new shoes coming.
What about taking 2 or 3 days off Have you considered that?
I mean, that has helped. I did that once before. I took a couple of days off in Luray with my wife.
Yeah.
And it certainly helps. It's just the timetable. You know, I'm on sabbatical, and so I have.
Of course, yes.
I have a limited amount of time, and so it's something that kind of gnaws at the back of my mind. I don't think anything's going to take me off trail, but if anything does, it'll probably be this.
What, the time scale or the plantar fasciitis?
The plantar fasciitis.
Yes, I know. So hang on. So have you worked out now how much longer have you got to go? I mean, in terms of time, are you allowed? Is there a hard deadline for when you need to finish by?
You need to finish by the middle of September.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Oh, you should be fine.
So I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and have you worked out how many days you need to do? Because I tell you what, I can guarantee you this: you will definitely slow down once you get to New Hampshire.
Yes.
I remember we were doing 20, 21, 22, 26 mile a day in Virginia and in Pennsylvania before we hit the rocks. But when you get to New Hampshire, we were lucky to do. I remember doing an 11 mile a day, which took us just over 11 hours to do. So
no kidding. It
does slow you right down. So just be aware of that. And you still got plenty of time to do it because you're in Connecticut now.
Massachusetts, Great Barrington.
Great Barrington, Massachusetts. Okay, so obviously you got 3 more states to come after this. How many miles are you in now then?
We're at 1527 here.
Wow,
so,
long way at it.
It really is.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I'm glad you could catch up. I'm glad we were able to connect and talk again. Keep going. Keep getting the trail magic, and make sure you just get your foot somehow your plantar fasciitis sorted out. You do if you're doing the regular stretches and the rollers and things like that.
Yeah. That's what I do. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good to talk to you, and we'll catch up again soon. Okay.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Man. Bye.
Bye.
He really needs to resolve his plantar fasciitis because he's going to be tested more and more as he heads north. Not sure if a simple couple of days rest will be enough, but New Hampshire and Maine aren't regarded as the 2 toughest states for no reason. If he can, then trying to rest up may well be the answer. And it's good to see that Trail Magic is still alive and well in the north, and it was especially nice to hear such positivity about some of the trail towns. Yeah, some of it is financial. But for many, meeting through hikers, listening to their stories, and hiking the trail vicariously through them is often enough for some people we meet. So give your time. Engage people with your stories. Because as I've said before, once you get back home, you've got a window of about 3 weeks to drone on about the trail to your family and friends before they'll be imploring you to talk about anything else. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Thanks as ever to our fantastic donors, with several recurring donors stepping up again this week. They are Michael Garsh, Betty McInerney, Sean Deadwiley, Ann Pickin, Sharon James, Melanie Swisher, Emmanuel Bravo-Ramos, Kevin Weidman, Brian Alsop, Jessica Diaz, Bruce Brinker, and Hugh Ickrath. So many thanks to all of you, and I hope that some of you who've never contributed to the Hiking Radio Network shows will see fit this week to recognise the time and effort that goes into these shows, and join this group of sponsors to keep us pushing great content your way. You just head to hikingradionetwork.com and click on one of the many donate buttons that you're going to find there. Thanks so much for your consideration. Now, to close out the week, my friend Emily Leonard learns that making adjustments while you're out on a long trail is an ability you need to learn very quickly indeed. I'll see you next week. Chapter 5. Adjustments. Andrew began using the name Gilligan. I then renamed Moxie Skipper. The wonderful thing about trail names is you do not have to accept one that has been bestowed upon you, as in this case. Gilligan's name derived from working at a summer Girl Scout camp during his youth. Everyone had camp names, so he had chosen Gilligan, being the only male he felt stranded on an island. I added that you can't have Gilligan without Skipper, so I named Moxie Skipper. Andrew did not go along with this. I arrived at Lower Gap Shelter way ahead of me. My pain once again slowed my arrival. I arrived at 4 p.m. 11.5 miles made our longest day yet. I was happy with the increase in daily mileage, even if it was only a 1.5 miles per hour pace. It was still lucky day number 7 to me, filled with sunshine and trail magic. Two ladies from Illinois provided a cookout for hikers at the Appalachian Trail crossing of GA 348. Even though we had our fill at breakfast, we were not going to turn down any free food. I had my first hot dog in over 15 years. I felt like I'd just fallen off the wagon. It tasted so good. The day also brought a hint of spring. I saw my first flower, a small 4-petaled purple flower with a yellow centre. I've called them forget-me-nots for years, but Google says they're bluets. In season, they can carpet an area with hundreds of thousands of blooms, but there was just one solitary silhouette for my pleasure. It truly was a lucky, more like blessed, day on the trail. As we continued on the path toward Franklin, North Carolina, we had relatively good weather with decent terrain. My aches and pains were even beginning to wane a little. We were settling into our own routines. I liked mornings, and Gilligan preferred sleeping in. One morning I was up and packed by 7 a.m. We were camped at Rocky Mountain Campsite. The wind had blown down my tent while I was getting ready in the morning. Instead of adjusting the stakes and retreating to the comforts of my space to wait for sunrise, I packed up. Gilligan was not as eager to greet the day. I was ready by 7 a.m, but neither the sun nor Gilligan were awake. Not excited to venture on my first solo dark hike, I waited, and waited, and waited. By the time Gilligan was ready, it was 8:30 a.m, and I was freezing. The 4,000 foot of elevation combined with wind had my bones doing more than just rattling, but I was too afraid to hike out alone. There is that fear issue again. When we finally set out for the day, Gilligan's skipper took off and left me behind. I was so mad, furious actually. I'd waited around for him for an hour and a half. It was at this point that I decided if I was going to hike alone, I might as well leave when I wanted to, scared or not. Once my pity party was over, I got my attitude right and had a great hike. Nowhere had we signed an allegiance to be on the same schedule. Andrew and I met up a few times for breaks or a snack. It was then I discovered that is what I really enjoyed most. Hiking alone stimulates the senses and lets the soul decompress. Then meeting up for breaks gives one something to look forward to after being alone. The end of the day provided camaraderie that was welcomed after a long day's hike. Another life lesson learned on the trail. When things don't go our way or as planned, our first instinct is to get mad, frustrated, or maybe even hostile. But most of the time, if we step back, breathe, adjust our attitude, and take the emotion out of the situation, we're apt to find it isn't nearly as bad as we thought. And in most cases, it turns out to be better than we could have imagined. The first 2 weeks on the trail, I developed my hiking rhythm. Packing up, hiking, resting, eating, collecting water, filtering water, camping, repeat. With that rhythm came education. I learned what I really needed, what I didn't need, my likes and dislikes. I learned I was definitely on the trail to hike and not to camp. Evenings in the shelters or in the company of other hikers was enjoyable also. It was a huge part of the experience. I met some really wonderful friends on the trail. One of my favourite things to do at the end of the day was to retreat to my sleeping bag and listen to the other hikers discuss their days. My only regret is that I didn't record all the awesome stories I heard. As long as I had my tent, sleeping bag and bare necessities, I was good. I went through my pack and made a note of what I really needed and what I didn't. Since I was already on the minimalist side, I tweaked and looked for those extra ounces that didn't seem like much but added up when combined. For example, I pared down to 1 extra pair of socks instead of 4. Plastic baggies replaced plastic containers for vitamins and pain relievers. 1 pair of extra batteries instead of 2. No spare undies. Going commando if needed never hurt anyone. It was actually quite comfy. Who decided we needed underwear anyway? Sorry, Grammy. It's just way better to be free. If I get into an accident, I don't have to worry about wearing dirty panties if I'm not wearing any. As soon as I decided I was going to do this hike, I started journaling and making a list of the gear I was sure I would be needing. I was inexperienced. The first 5 items were tampons. Yep, that was first on my list, followed by a flashlight, ball cap with a light, clothing with bright colours, and a note to consider getting a short haircut. I had read that long hair increased your chances of picking up ticks, my numero uno fear on the trail. Looking back at that list, I think it's funny where my thoughts were pre-hike. That's all I could come up with for an initial list for a 6-month hike in the woods. Boy, did I have a lot to learn. I love lists and my journal was full of them. I used bullets more often than actual paragraphs to record my journey. It was quicker and used less paper. Every gram counts on a thru-hiker's pack. Post-hike, reading my notes made me realise just how much I had learned and how I made adjustments. Adjustments were made even before I set out on the hike. Only one of those initial items made the cut. I actually grew out my hair and wore black most of the time. I didn't carry a flashlight but used a headlamp instead. I nixed the ball cap with a light. There was no room for duplicate items. The only item of the original 5 that made it into my pack was the feminine hygiene products. More on that later. The more I confronted, the more I had to learn. For the first 2 weeks, my learning curve looked like an infinite positive linear regression graph on a mathematician's quest to find the answer to the universe. Thanks to my engineering husband and son, they helped me with these terms. I invoked their brains so I could sound smart. They said, "You only sound confusing." Here are a few of those lessons learned. How to hike. How to use bear cables. How to throw a line for my food bag. How to tie off my food bag line. How to dry my clothes while wearing them. How to sleep on slanted ground. How to pitch my tarp tent for rain when it's windy. How much water to carry, never enough. How to prevent blisters. How to bandage a blister if previous prevention didn't work. How to filter water properly. How to collect water from a shallow source. How to load my pack efficiently. How to put on my pack efficiently without hurting my arms or back. How to pack in the rain. I learned that fast. These are not the only things I learned on my hike, but they were what I learned right off the start. Another list I created included my likes and dislikes. Likes. Hiking. The sun on my face. The views. Rhododendron forests. Cold mountain water to drink. Camp time with other hikers. Gilligan and Moxie. Trail magic. The simplicity of nature. It was a good thing I liked hiking, since I had over 2,100 miles to go. Whenever anyone asked me what I liked most about my journey, I responded, the hike. I didn't care if it was raining, windy, cold, sunny, hot or buggy. I liked hiking. Nothing else mattered. When I was moving, everything was great. I loved the changes of terrain. I liked the way the trail transformed from a thick forest to an open mountaintop, or how it meandered through a rhododendron tunnel whose leaves were dormant, hanging toward the ground, waiting for spring to wake them up. As the path carved its way along a ridge, it brought new surprises with each switchback. But when I stopped, it was a different story. Most things were annoying to me when I was stationary. Dislikes. Clanging bottles. Being cold and wet at the same time. Biting insects. I already knew that. Wind. My tent. Having to go pee at night. Late sunrise. Early sunset. Waiting. I wrote a whole paragraph on bottles, the annoying hiker with aluminum bottles attached to the outside of his pack. My oldest brother, John, was worried about my safety on the trail and offered to gift me a handgun. Bottles was lucky I did not let John buy me that equaliser he so wanted me to carry. I may just have gone postal on him. Not really, but the noise did drive me insane. Google misophonia and you will have an idea of how it bothered me. Besides irritating noises, having to go pee in the middle of the night in the wilderness is also quite bothersome. It's bad enough when you're at home. Out in the woods at night, when it's cold, rainy or scary, is even worse. Many nights I would lie awake with a full bladder, putting off the task until morning when it was time to pack up. Several of my male hiking friends carried an extra wide-mouthed sport drink bottle designated for their nightly nature call. I didn't dare to try it. I dreaded the thought of poor aim. External plumbing, I'm sure, makes the task easier. If the weather was bad, I stopped drinking after 5 p.m. I'd hydrate in the morning. This was not wise. Your body needs water, and it will tell you so, as I learned later on. The last list I wrote in my journal was about what not to do as a hiker. The first major no-no was when I set off my emergency device accidentally. I learned to be ever vigilant after that. I wish I could say that it only happened once. The Outdoor Code of Ethics found at lnt.org sums up nicely what not to do. I just wished everyone on the trail knew the code. One evening I was collecting my water from a very small stream that trickled along the forest floor, playing hide-and-go-seek in the leaves and rocks. The water source was no more than 2 inches at its deepest point, making collection very challenging. The process was slow and tedious. Another hiker, forgetting what he learned in kindergarten about waiting and taking turns, jumped upstream of me and started digging out a deeper spot, thinking this would make the process go more quickly. Not only did he turn the clean stream into a muddy leaf-filled pool, it contaminated everything downstream. So it's a big no-no to mess with the water supply when others are using it. Principle number 7, be considerate of other visitors. Proper etiquette in the woods is to dispose of your food waste properly. That's principle number 3. Part of that means disposing of food waste away from your sleeping area, or better yet, pack it out. Another hiker had part of it correct. She ate and then disposed of her leftover food and the water she used to clean her dishes away from her tent. She even brushed her teeth a distance away from where she was sleeping. What she failed to do was to keep a safe distance from my tent. She was about 40 yards from her own place, but only about 10 feet from my spot and another hiker's spot. I was not impressed. I was still carrying my polite ways from back home and kept quiet. For the most part, hikers were very considerate of each other. But just as in the real world, there will always be that one bad apple or two. It wouldn't be until much later in the hike that I would learn to speak my piece without reservation. Nicely, of course. No one likes to be told what to do, but sometimes it must be done. After the honeymoon stage came the adjustment stage, learning and adapting to trail life. Learning to fix my attitude when things didn't go as planned or go my way was a huge adjustment. Learning my gear, what worked, what didn't, my likes, dislikes, the weather, and how to prevent and or heal from injuries all helped me grow and enjoy what I was doing. The biggest challenge of all, and one of the most rewarding at times, was dealing with all the people. There were so many hikers out there, it wasn't nearly as secluded or deserted as one would think. A quick 6.5 mile Nero day brought us to Dick's Creek on day 9. The hike tortured my knee and feet. The inclines and terrain were the toughest so far. Working out the kinks, unfavourable weather, and the frustration of hiking someone else's hike had my attitude in the dumpster. People were waiting for me at Dick's Creek, or so I thought. Gilligan and I had met 2 section hikers whose car was waiting at the parking area, and they offered to give us a ride to the hostel where we were staying that night. At some point in the day, everyone passed me. I tried to catch up. I didn't rest as much as I needed to. Just as I exited the woods, I saw the couple crossing the road into the parking lot. They'd just arrived and were not waiting for me after all. Then I realised Gilligan was nowhere to be found. 15 minutes later, he and Moxie came strolling off the trail. I asked how I'd passed him, and he said they had taken a side trail to see the views. I remembered seeing the sign for that trail in view. Someone had even carved the word epic into it. I skipped it, thinking I would be holding up the crew. Another lesson learned. Hike your own hike. We stayed at Top of Georgia, TOG, hostel, a simple place with a friendly staff. For a small fee, you got a bunk bed, laundry done separately from other hikers, and breakfast. They also provided hospital scrubs to wear while your clothes were being washed. Gilligan and I happened to receive matching outfits. We were styling as we took the shuttle into Hiawassee for supper and resupply. We looked more like escapees from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Rumour has it the nearby town thinks the hostel runs a cult and allows their members to go to town in their garments. We were not sipping any Kool-Aid at the Top of Georgia, but they did offer pizza and a breakfast. Bunks were in 2 different areas, one for hikers with pets and one for hikers without pets. We had Moxie, so we were in the doghouse called the Wolf Den. Another hiker and her dog, Potato Wedge, shared our room. The dog was a cute mutt, but could be temperamental. His owner was also cute, but ditzy. Her name was also Emily, a fact that made me cringe. After meeting her, I took great pains not to let people know my real name in fear they would think I was her. Stories travel faster than hikers on the trail, a fact I learned all too well later on. After our jaunt into town in our cult uniforms, we went back to our bunkhouse only to be greeted by Potato Wedge, who didn't think we should be allowed in. He tangled himself around the bedpost he was tied to. Miss Potato Wedge was nowhere to be seen. I usually never approach a strange dog, but since we had met earlier on the trail, I was banking on his bark being all show. Gilligan had his hands full with Moxie, so I helped free the pooch, for which he was grateful. This would be my first introduction to a hostel. The closest experience I've had to hostel life would have to be hunting camp. My brothers and dad owned a small rustic camp in the middle of the woods. There was a kitchen, a mudroom, and a bunk room that slept 11. The differences between camp and TOG were that at TOG everyone was a stranger and there was power and plumbing. Peace and quiet would have been nice. Hike at midnight is considered to be about 7:30 p.m, but it was well after that when 2 more weary souls joined our pack. Only humans though, we had enough dogs for the night. On the outside, these 2 may have had man-like qualities, but the noises that came from within while they slept bordered on monstrous. At one point I couldn't sleep and went next door to the other room, which housed the bathroom. I realised our room was quiet compared to the racket that was coming from the other bunkhouse, so I returned to my less noisy bedroom and tried to drown out the sound with earplugs. The next morning I met Bionic Woman, a hiker who was an amputee. Her story was incredible. She was an outdoor enthusiast and had taken a bad rock climbing fall, resulting in the loss of one leg from the knee down. She was hiking the trail in hopes of regaining strength and confidence to go back to her job as a ski instructor. She was getting off the trail for a bit due to an infection caused by her prosthetic. Later I was told someone had stolen her wallet and all her money, not at TOG but someplace else. Shrek, a fellow hiker, fixed a broken crutch with a broom handle to get her by until she was able to get back to the hospital. Her journey was highlighted in the AT Journeys magazine in 2016. What an incredible story. My metatarsals no longer hurt so much. We were back at it the next day, but not for long. We only hiked 4.5 miles to Plum Orchard Gap Shelter. The reason for the short hike? Rain. Gilligan hated hiking in the rain. I don't like camping in the rain. I wanted to keep going. But it was a good idea to stop. The rain kept pouring down and the temperature also dropped. Stopping early gave us a chance to dry our clothes before sleeping. If we would have continued, we might not have been able to dry off. This would be our first night in a shelter. It was a cosy 3-level structure. The first level was topped off shoulder height with the second level. There was enough room on the lower level to sit up in your sleeping bag, but not to stand. Same was true for the second level. The third level was accessed by a ladder and created a ceiling for the picnic table area. It formed a place to wait out the rain. We claimed a spot on the lower level close to one wall. Moxie and Gilligan, then me. I made my sleeping area with my ground cloth first, then blew up my pad and finished with my sleeping bag. I did not change into my dry clothes right away. Instead, I zipped up my Gore-Tex rain jacket and put on my stocking cap and hood to conserve what body heat I was producing. I didn't just sit either. I walked around the shelter the best I could. With my body heat captured in my breathable Gore-Tex, I was able to dry up my shirt and sports bra. My pants even dried. Once I was no longer soaked, I changed into my wool base layer for the night, stuffing my hiking attire into my sleeping bag and crawled in to keep warm for the rest of the afternoon. The soggy conditions brought in lots of hikers. 13 of us sought refuge from the elements under the tri-level structure. Besides our 3 amigos, there was Lunch Lady, a lady of my age, Midnight, a disabled veteran in his 50s who went AWOL from a VA clinic, added to the mix of company. Shrek and Donkey took up residence for the night as well. There were 2 college kids and 3 other hikers I don't remember. Lunch Lady, Midnight and I were keeping warm by bag dancing. Bag dancing was my term for the ridiculous activity we chose to keep busy as the rain kept us cooped up in the shelter. Shrek was playing music and we were in our sleeping bags, sitting up against the back wall, swaying and moving to the soundtracks. It served 2 purposes, kept us warm and kept us entertained, since it was way too early to go to bed, even for me. During the dance party, 2 new faces showed up. Walking Man and Carl, a father-son duo from Boothbay, Maine, walked up to the shelter. We all shared a quick greeting and, in a flash, Carl stripped off his wet coat and shirt. I looked at Lunch Lady and she looked at me, both with approval of the eye candy. It was our own little glimpse of a PG-rated Playgirl magazine. Being the polite 40-somethings that we were, we did not stare. It's funny how we stopped noticing the rain. That night I slept well, despite how cold it was. At one point, I woke up and could hear and feel Gilligan shivering. I felt really bad for him. It was the mother bear coming out. Not wanting him to be cold or too proud to ask for warmth, I said I was really cold and could I scoot over. Without waiting for a reply, I did, and I also reached out, putting my arm around him. I wasn't cold, but I thought I was helping. Apparently not. I don't remember what he said, if anything, but my comforting act was not welcomed. Oops, sorry, Andrew. As they say, no good deed goes unpunished. Even with a good night's sleep, we had a slow start the next day. We didn't get out until 10 a.m. and were done hiking by 2:50 p.m. We hiked a mere 7.3 miles, again in the pouring rain. Muskrat Shelter would be our stop for the night. What a dump! I wanted to continue, but Gilligan was done. He found no joy in the rain. So far, by day 11 on the trail, we had completed a mere 81 miles. Only 2 days were our miles in double digits, and we had already spent 3 nights in a real bed under a real roof. Due to our slow pace, Bruce told me later he was planning on having Thanksgiving dinner on top of Katahdin. Funny guy, isn't he? The only good thing in stopping early on those rainy days was that I dried out, or at the very least I was not so soggy. In the afternoon at Muskrat Shelter, a few hikers stopped for breaks. One of them was furious at Miss Potato Wedge, the hiker at top of Georgia Hostel. He showed us where her dog, Potato Wedge, had bitten him. She had again left her pooch alone, but this time he was tied on the porch near other hikers' gear. When this hiker went to grab his pack, the dog lunged, biting him on the abdomen. Dogs can be scary on the trail. In hindsight, I'm just glad Potato Wedge didn't bite me. Later, I hiked upon a father-daughter duo resting. Their black lab perched on a shoulder-height boulder on the trail. The daughter, about 10, sat next to Fido. Dad stood behind them. My uphill approach placed them at a higher level than myself. In a dog's world, a stature of domination. As I closed the gap, the dog stood up on the rock with hair raised. The young girl hugged her dog. I stopped a safe distance away, then asked the man to hold the anxious animal. He became irritated and insisted there was nothing to worry about. All the while, the dog was showing his teeth and growling. I would not proceed until the dad, not the girl, had control of the dog. He continued to inform me I was being ridiculous. Again, I thought of Brother John and the gift I refused. We had been on the trail for less than 2 weeks, yet I already felt so accomplished. I'd done more personally challenging stuff in that time than I had in all my years up to that point. That's not to take away from previous accomplishments, but this was different. Reflecting on my lists, I realised those little lessons that seemed so insignificant were stepping stones toward helping me enjoy my hike even more. Each new task meant learning, which required me to make adjustments so I could grow and tackle the next obstacle.